Winter's embrace, a secluded cabin retreat. Snow fell softly, it blanketed the earth in a pristine white. The old cabin stood silent, nestled amongst towering pines. A frozen lake stretched out before it, a vast expanse of glistening ice. The only sounds were the whisper of the wind and the occasional groan of the ice. It was idyllic, peaceful, the perfect escape. Inside, a fire crackled merrily in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the log walls. The aroma of pine needles and wood smoke filled the air. Olivia and David unpacked their bags, their breaths misting in the cool air. They were here to escape the city, to reconnect with each other and with nature. For a week, this secluded haven was theirs. They moved about the cabin, unpacking supplies and settling in. Laughter echoed through the small space as they reminisced about past vacations. A sense of contentment settled over them. They were happy to be here, away from the noise and stress of everyday life. The frozen lake beckoned, its silence both alluring and unnerving. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Olivia stepped out onto the porch. The air was crisp and cold, biting at her cheeks. She took a deep breath, savoring the silence. It was then that she saw it. A shadow, long and dark, moved across the surface of the frozen lake. Whispers of unease. The shadow emerges. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. The shadow seemed to writhe and twist like a living thing. It moved with an eerie fluidity that belied the stillness of the frozen lake. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at the edges of her joy. She couldn't tear her eyes away. "David!" Olivia called, her voice trembling slightly. "Come look at this!" David joined her on the porch, his arm wrapping around her waist. He followed her gaze to the lake. The shadow was gone. "What is it, love?" he asked, concern creasing his forehead. Olivia described the shadow, her words tumbling over each other in her haste. David listened patiently, his expression soothing. When she finished, he chuckled softly and pulled her close. "It was probably just the wind on the ice," he said, his voice a calming presence, "playing tricks on your eyes." Olivia wanted to believe him, she really did, but deep down a seed of unease had been planted. The way the shadow had moved, so fluid and unnatural, it felt wrong. She pushed the feeling aside, determined to enjoy their vacation, but the image of the shadow lingered in the back of her mind, a dark premonition she couldn't shake. The ice holds secrets, daybreak exploration. The next morning dawned bright and clear. The sun glinted off the snow, making the world sparkle. Olivia tried to shake off the unease of the previous night. She focused on the beauty around her, on the warmth of David's hand in hers. They decided to explore the frozen lake. David laced up his boots, his movements brisk and efficient. Olivia bundled up in her warmest coat, her breath forming white puffs in the frigid air. They stepped out onto the lake, the ice creaking and groaning beneath their feet. The sound, though unnerving, was also strangely beautiful, a reminder of the raw power of nature. They walked hand in hand, their laughter echoing across the frozen expanse. The sun was high in the sky now, casting long shadows across the ice. Olivia found herself constantly glancing back over her shoulder, searching for any sign of the shadow. But there was nothing, just the vast, empty lake stretching out before them like a frozen ocean. Night terrors, the shadow returns. As dusk descended, they returned to the cabin, their cheeks flushed from the cold. The fire had burned down to embers. David rekindled it, the flames casting flickering shadows on the walls. Olivia couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the cabin, every whisper of the wind sent a shiver down her spine. That night Olivia woke with a gasp. Something felt wrong, the room was too quiet, the air thick with a strange tension. She turned to David, but he was sound asleep. She slipped out of bed and crept to the window. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow on the snow-covered landscape. And then she saw it, the shadow. It was back. Larger and darker than before, it moved across the lake with a serpentine grace. It seemed closer now, almost as if it were watching the cabin. Olivia's breath hitched in her throat, her heart pounding against her ribs. This was not her imagination. This was real, and it was terrifying.